welcome to the first of 5 workshops of the Transport Week. And this workshop will deal with the very important topic of sustainable urban freight or future-proof smart city logistics. This is actually a premiere because we've never had in the history of the Transport Week a workshop dealing with the topic of urban freight, which I think shows that it is a topic that is often overlooked, but it is a topic also that has increased in relevance in the last year since e-commerce and online shopping has certainly increased. Today we will learn from the experience and examples from city logistic actors, different stakeholders from different continents. So if you have speakers from Asia, we have a speaker from Africa and Europe. And we will look into technologies, we will look into policies and innovation. The inputs shall be short, maximum of 5 minutes, so that we have a lot of space for interaction, because this workshop is not supposed to be a one-way street where I and the speakers only talk to you, but we also want to hear from the participants out there what they think. So you have the chance to ask questions and interact with us. So welcome again to all delegates who are joining in from the regional hubs of the Transport Week, and also welcome to all viewers who are watching right now on the virtual event platform. And I'm very lucky because I don't have to do this alone today, this event. I have a very able co-host, and that is Tran from ICLEI. Hi, Tumi.
Hi, Friedel. How are you?
I'm very good. Where are you joining me from?
I'm joining from Verona, which I found out it's one of the top inland ports in Europe. Verona is known, of course, for Romeo and Juliet or the Arena and the opera season, but it's also known for apparently the inland port.
All right, interesting. I forgot to mention that ICLEI is the co-organizer of this event today. So Tumi, you and me, we have been organizing this event together over the last couple of weeks. So thank you again, and I really look forward to hosting this event together with you. Now, since this is a workshop, it's all about interaction. So just to warm up everyone a little bit, we have a very simple interaction. Can I have the instruction, please? Slide with instruction. OK. So in this event, please all go to the virtual event platform, where next to the live stream, you will find a poll. The poll has, first of all, a super simple question. Which city are you currently based in? So we want to know, where are you right now? So put in your location. The second question is also simple to answer because it's a multiple choice question. Please let us know what you think are the negative impacts of urban freight transport that you observe in your city. So please take a moment to find the poll on the event platform, vote, and then we will come back and have a look at the results. While we do that, maybe a quick reflection. One thing I always have to think about in the topic of urban freight is that everything I own, every item I have in my closet, in my fridge, has to do with urban freight. Everything, actually, the whole physical environment has come to us, to where it is through freight transport. Just to underline how significant the urban freight system is, it really delivers everything that we have, own, and see around us. So can we have a look at the results? OK, great. So we see we have participants from different geographies. We have here cities in Germany, of course, Berlin, Bonn, and Cologne, but also from Jakarta, from Semarang, cities in Indonesia. We have from the Philippines, from Tripolis, from New Delhi, from close to Leuven, which is in Belgium, from the city of Kochi in India. So great that we have a very global audience here today, and that's what the Transport Week is all about. Can we have a look at the results of the next question, please? OK, so what are the negative impacts of urban freight transport that you see in your city? And on top of the ranking is traffic congestion. More and more delivery vehicles are on our urban streets. The second is road safety. Maybe the delivery drivers are driving too fast or hazardly. And on the third, fourth, and fifth places come noise pollution, greenhouse gas emissions, and air pollution. So we see sustainable freight is about so much more than greenhouse gas emissions, even though this is the Transport and Climate Change Week. Of course, other aspects of sustainability matter just as much, and I think for many local decision makers, even more than the greenhouse gas emissions. Okay, now we can move on to the next section. I have a guest with me in the studio, and my guest today is Alvin. Hi, Alvin.
Good morning, Friedel.
So, Alvin, I've known you for 8 years.
Oh, you counted?
Yes, I counted. When I met you 8 years ago, you worked at Clean Air Asia, a regional NGO based in Manila, as the transport program manager. After that, you went to do another degree in Australia on something technical transport. Mm-hmm. And now you're based here in Berlin, working at the Wuppertal Institute as a research fellow.
Indeed.
So great to have you here.
Thank you very much for having me here. And I would like to thank GIZ and ICLEI for inviting us today.
Yeah, you're very welcome to be here with me. So your job today is to set the scene, to give us a high-level overview of the topic of urban freight, since you are also the editor of the Sustainable Urban Freight Sourcebook of GIZ. You have spent the last half year to review the edition, which was already 10 years old, have updated it, gave it really a thorough review, and it's going to come out soon, I suppose?
I suppose so.
Okay,
yeah.
so
we do have the draft ready, but yeah, we'll see. I think it's already up in the SUTP website, but yeah, we'll have to confirm as well. With
okay, so I guess we get a sneak preview today of some of the things that you will find in the source book. Then I hand over to you, Alvin, to deliver your presentation.
Thank you very much. Can I have the presentation, please? That's fine. Okay. So good morning, good afternoon, everyone who is tuned in. So again, I would like to thank GIZ and ICLEI for having me here today to discuss a very important topic. As Friedel has mentioned earlier, that this is the first time within the history of the Transport and Climate Week, we're in a separate session on urban freight and logistics has been organized. And for me personally, this is a very positive move, which signifies that the community in general is really looking forward to addressing this sector, and if I may say so, addressing the elephant in the room. Historically, urban freight and logistics has not been given the much needed attention that it deserves due to a variety of reasons. First of all, like situating it within the wider framework of development priorities within cities, also given the complexity of the sectors, the different processes, institutions that are involved in terms of moving our goods and materials in our cities. And finally, we also have the limitations in terms of the resources of city authorities, whether it may be in terms of finances or maybe in terms of human resources, to deal with sustainably planning and managing urban freight in our cities. But the situation does not change in terms of the need to address urban freight issues. In terms of climate change, we do recognize the unique characteristics of the sector in a way that we recognize that these are mostly composed of more shortened types of trips with multiple loads, different types of loads, with different sets of stakeholders engaging from the movement of the goods from the origin to the destination. The total transport activity contribution of the sector might be very low. The International Transport Forum actually estimates in the recent global outlook that this sector only contributes around 3% of the total freight activity, but it does disproportionately contribute to CO2 emissions, which is comparable to the shipping sector at around 20%. And if we look into the right, we get a glimpse of the speed and magnitude of activity and growth in emissions in terms of the urban freight sector in the developing regions and countries. And this also justifies the need to essentially address the challenges as soon as possible, as soon as we can, and set those strategies on board. And the future-proofing of the urban freight and logistics sector makes a lot more sense if we look into the different challenges that are involved in the sector. As you have mentioned earlier in the survey, a lot of the participants have different sentiments with regards to which priorities are interlinked to the local context in terms of urban mobility. But we can see this if we see the flip side, that having sustainable urban freight and logistics strategies and measures would be a way to approach the different multidimensional challenges in our urban areas. And for me, really, I encourage everyone to look into urban freight and logistics systems, not just as transportation systems that are just movements, but to see it as a social-technical system that is multi-scalar, multi-dimensional, with different components that are related to the people, their cultures, their goals, and the different stakeholders that come along with the whole system, and as well as the processes, infrastructure, and technology, and the interlinkages between these different components in terms of looking into more sustainable pathways for the urban freight and logistics sector. So in this slide, we would like to, again, mention that an updated source book on sustainable urban freight would be made available, if not already available, under the sutp.org website. This has been a culmination of the updating of the original source book, but now we've integrated the 10 principles for sustainable urban freight, which really is aligned with the sustainable urban transport principles that has been there, that was developed under GIZ. I won't go to the details of the principles, but essentially this is a set of principles that is hinged on recognizing that the sector is a socio-technical one, and that we can look into measures in a strategic way towards a strategic and inclusive way towards the transition process towards moving towards more sustainable urban freight and logistics system. I guess just as a point to all of the listeners who are listening into to us today, I think moving towards the future, we can't imagine really sustainable cities without a sustainable urban freight system, and there's really no way around that. So I guess that's my last slide. So thank you very much for your attention.
Yeah, thank you, Alvin, for this interesting scene setter in our workshop today. So I realize urban freight is a complex issue, but we're lucky that we have a lot of time today, 175 minutes to dive deep into this topic. So since you described urban freight as a system, like a social ecological system, in what way is it different from urban passenger transport? Could you maybe compare it in terms of a few aspects?
Yeah. So thank you very much, Friedel, for the question. I think it's a really important question when we look into how urban freight has been looked into in terms of policymaking, in terms of strategies. As I've mentioned earlier, it has been also a matter of situating urban freight within the other priorities of city authorities, urban governments, and also within the spectrum of transportation as well. We see that a lot of things have been happening more in the urban passenger transport side of things, which is understandable since we, or the city authorities, the urban governments would really want to ensure sustainable and low carbon passenger transport services. It's really about the provision of these types of basic services to the people. The main difference being the items that are actually being moved. So when you move something that's in a static, non-decision-making type of good, that's really something different in terms of prioritization as you compare it to people. And the way the goods are moved, it's totally different from how passengers move. Passengers have the decisions given the different modes that they are presented with. But for goods, it's really about the processes and the stakeholders that come along when delivering the goods from the origin to destination. So it's really something that's quite different, but should be treated with the same level of attention, because these movements interact within the same space in the urban systems.
All right. Yeah, so truly we have differences, but also commonalities. I think both move on the same roads, yeah? But exactly. We have a different set of actors, and different infrastructures, different kinds of vehicles. Yes. So yeah, that's, I think, something to consider. And why do you think is this topic so often overlooked in the policy making and sustainable urban mobility plans?
I guess, again, as I mentioned during the first part of the presentation, aside from the the innate priority that is given, for example, to understandably to passenger transportation, we are confronted with limitations in terms of resources, in terms of capacities, maybe in terms also of financial resources that would deal with the sector, and it's really difficult due to the complexity of the sector, as we had discussed earlier, due to the convoluted space in terms of all the stakeholders that need to be engaged within the whole
I realize
process.
It is a capacity challenge, which is a good keyword, because we can move on to our next speaker, and our next speaker is actually my co-moderator, Tumi. Can we have Tumi, please, with us? Hi, Tumi. You're not only my co-moderator, but also an expert on transport matters, since you are a senior director, I think, at ICLEI, handling a lot of transport projects, including the EcoLogistics project. So, Tumi, why, from your perspective, does freight matter for cities? What are the lessons learned that you have learned in your EcoLogistics project? And tell us a little bit about the resources that you have developed and how cities can use them. And let me know when you want to see the next slide. I can click for you.
Thank you, Friedel. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. And thank you, GIZ, and also Friedel, for the co-organization of this session. As Alvin has mentioned, it's really welcoming to see this session on urban freight, and because the conversation has been really dominant on passenger transport. And it's great to have this opportunity to share more about the EcoLogistics low carbon freight for sustainable cities. And in the next slide, I compiled some numbers about why, from a transport and climate perspective, the argument is quite compelling. In fact, urban freight transport is responsible for 50% of GHG emission related to transport in 2020. It was a special year, of course, because of the pandemic and also reduced passenger and people's movement. And road freight is still dominant as a mode of transport, and so it's very important that this area is taken into consideration when we look into decarbonizing transportation. In the next slide, instead, we have, I'm sharing a number about why urban freight in particular is so important. And 20% is the share of GHG emission of both maritime shipping and urban freight but maritime shipping covers 70% of freight activities, but urban freight only 3%. And so it's really clear from these numbers that urban freight is highly inefficient, and but however, as we learned in the past year, behind any challenge and crisis, there is an opportunity. And in this case, there is a huge opportunity and potential in urban freight to make it more sustainable and also to improve the quality of life in cities. Despite all these numbers, and they are only part of related to climate and transport, policymakers are still overlooking urban freight in their policy and planning. And therefore, with the ICI-funded project, EcoLogistics, ICLEI and partners have started the EcoLogistics initiative, where we are working on tackling the issue of urban freight, especially in the global south, and build capacities in local governments. And to do that, we essentially work on a baseline report. We create a stakeholders engagement and conversations, and we develop an action plan for long-term planning and create national recommendations, which are informed also from the demonstration projects. And of course, there is an entire activity of awareness raising and advocacy to raise the ambitions across the different cities and regions. Today, we will have also the opportunity later on to hear from Kochi. And we have also accelerated, we aim to accelerate the learning from different cities by creating also a community which the starting point were these 9 pioneering cities in India, Argentina, and Colombia. Different tools were developed, as Friedel has mentioned, and we had the self-monitoring tool, which is an overview. You can see it in the next slide. And this self-monitoring tool allows the cities to calculate emissions and have a first citywide freight emissions overview. And this is the first attempt on a tool and has been aligned with existing frameworks as well. And in the next slide, you get a glimpse of what the tool is about and the emission calculations. Why this is important is that with a baseline, cities are able to then essentially gain a better understanding and also produce better get informed goal setting and also better policies. And in the last slide, we also created some ecologistics principles, which helps the cities to essentially in their transition towards urban freight and logistics. So the major lessons learned for us is really that cities should start talking about urban freight, and this needs to be done in all levels of governments, so at the local level, regional level, and national level. And together, then we are able to integrate better passenger transport and urban freight transport and create better systems for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tumi. So it's great to see that urban logistics is maybe not rocket science because you can boil it down to a handful of principles. That's really great. So we do have one question coming in from the audience, which I would like to ask you, Tumi. So freight does not have a vote, like citizens do. Is this maybe a reason why it is not such an issue for politicians?
I think freight is an issue for politicians now because it's getting more visible, especially through the pandemic. Before it was still visible through the companies, but then freight per se was invisible because in the end, no one thinks about, for instance, about how parcels come or how deliveries come through to the supermarkets. So it's still urban freight is slightly different because of the governance and ownership over the issue. Perhaps that's a better way of phrasing it from my perspective, because then from the policymaker perspective, they feel that they have very limited influence, and so and they see this more an issue for perhaps the private sector, and they don't and therefore, the fact that the private sector, this is also an economic activity, then it's very hard for policymakers to essentially regulate this activity and then ensure compliance and also create an enabling environment for the private sector and the different operators.
There's certainly a lot of different perspectives on this question of, why urban freight is an issue or not an issue for politicians. And one that you have certainly highlighted is because the focus is so much more on economics and the private sector. It is a business. So it's not so much about behavior change and personal mobility behavior. Okay, now Alvin, I turn to you with one more question. And the question is, so imagine I'm the mayor of a very big developing city, and I would ask you to give me some advice, be my consultant, yeah? Which one or two actions would you recommend to me, yeah, that can make a big difference?
Right. So thanks a lot, Friedel. I think if I am going to advise you on what to do first, I think it has to be mobilizing the stakeholders to know more about the system in the city, what's happening, what are being moved, and having a communal understanding and elevating the discussion within the urban freight and logistics stakeholders. This is something that we're also trying to do in one of our projects, the solutions, the EU Solutions Plus project. For example, in Quito and Pasig City, we're trying to elevate those discussions with the local stakeholders, not just with the carriers and the shippers, but also the smaller players in terms of the micro stores, for example, and trying to figure out the movements of these goods in those areas, and trying to figure out the roles of each of the different stakeholders and what are the synergies in terms of the goals of these stakeholders that we can actually latch on to be able to look into a more cohesive strategy moving towards the future.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Alvin. So I see many more questions coming in. We don't have the time anymore to answer all of them. Just a very quick reaction from you to me. A question, are micro hubs the way forward? What do you think about this approach, micro hubs as a solution?
I think that could be part of the solution. But we need to understand, we need to work on the innovative business models to see how this can be sustained over time, and especially and also on how the different stakeholders can contribute to that.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Chumi, for being quick. So now, thank you, Alvin, for being here with me today. I know you're a very busy man. See you soon, hopefully again. Actually, Alvin told me at the beginning, this is his first conference he visited since
the last Transport and Climate Change Week last
exactly,
year.
So thank you very much for being here today. So let's move on to the next quick interaction. So please go back to the event platform where you find another survey. And this time the survey, again, is a multiple choice survey, so not so difficult to answer. So please go to the event platform. You know already where to find the survey. And the survey question that you need to answer is about what are the most critical challenges that you observe or see in the area of urban logistics in your city. So have a look at the survey, see the answers. It's a little bit more complex than the first question, but since you are probably all more experts than I am, it shouldn't be too difficult to answer that question. So let's see what answers come in. Can we have the results, please? Okay, so the results are still changing a little. So lack of coordination among stakeholders is the top challenge that people see. I think we've heard from our two previous speakers that it is definitely a multi-stakeholder issue. So that's why coordination and working together is essential. Too much focus on passenger mobility. We have also heard that there is not enough attention on this topic, and everything is about urban passenger. But also lack of policies and regulation, lack of tools and methodologies do matter, and that's why capacity development is important, and that's why organizations like mine, GIZ and ICLEI, think it is important to cooperate in this area. Okay, now I have the pleasure to hand over to Tumi. So hello again, Tumi.
Hi.
Hi.
I have the pleasure to moderate the case study forum, which will showcase 3 different cases of policy and practices around the globe. We are very lucky to have this also hybrid approach that GIZ has fostered for us, so we can move around the world from China to India to Kenya. And the first speaker will be Xiaoyu, a senior engineer, transport planning and research institute from MIT, who will share with us about new energy vehicles in the urban delivery sector in China. And the second speaker, this presentation will be followed by the mayor of Kochi Municipal Corporation, Anil Kumar, who will share his EcoLogistics and logistics and freight experience in Kochi, India. And last but not least, we will have Nicho Ntema, Director, Anywhere.Africa, Kenya Ltd, who will share with us his experience on e-cargo bikes made in Africa. I'm very excited to hear about all this presentation, but before we go there, I would like to invite you to post your question in chat and remind you to be very concise and also to direct your question to a specific speaker and name them in your question. So without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Xiaoyu.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I will introduce something in China about the new energy logistic vehicles in our city. And so can you see the PPT slides? Actually, I will say something about in China, and now China is become the largest country in production and sales of new energy logistic vehicles in the world. And you can see the chart that now in 2019, we have already got accumulative stocks of about 412,000 new energy logistic vehicles. And in recent years, and also other types of fuels, logistic vehicles also in China has begun, such as plug-in hybrid logistic vehicles and hydrogen fuel cell logistic vehicles. And in China, with the continuous improvement of infrastructure and gradual improvement of industrial supporting facilities and increasingly mature technology and increased scale economy, new energy logistics vehicles in China are still on the growth stage. And next slide, please. And I want to show you 2 cases in China. One is Chengdu and one is Shenzhen. These 2 cities perform very good in the new energy logistic vehicles. So let's see Chengdu first. And now they have 30,000 new energy logistic vehicles in the city, and have 23 and 700 charging piles, and they have 4 experience about management mechanism and right of way and incentive policy and other measures. In management mechanism, they had already set up the leading group for pilot work of urban joint distribution in Chengdu with the deputy mayor as leader. And in about the right of way, this is want to show you the right of way just only for new energy logistic vehicles. There is no restrictions to new energy free vehicle, and they will phase out city entry permission for ICE freight vehicles from this year. and there are no parking fee for the first 2 hours per day in temporary parking areas in the city. And about incentive policy, they have implement national subsidy policy and required local subsidy measures. And in other measures, they have do 2 things. One is about the standardization. They use the unified model technology identification and management of pilot vehicles. And they also built and operate the urban shared distribution monitoring service platform. This kind of platform have many functions, such as information query, such as vehicle monitoring and electric fence, index statistics, and performance evaluation and data analysis. They all provide services for these new energy logistic vehicles. And next slide, please. And I will introduce something about the case in Shenzhen. And Shenzhen now is the biggest holding city for new energy logistic vehicles. You can see they have 81,000 battery electric vehicles and have 60,953 charging piles. And they also have 4 kind of things. Is about management mechanism. In management mechanism, they are different with Chengdu, because Shenzhen is a city with small government and a big market. They have municipal transport bureau to management about the electric logistic, but the bureau is the most thing for the bureau is to solve problem and to provide the good policy environment. And the most things about the new energy logistic vehicles is pushed by the Shenzhen New Energy Vehicle Application and Promotion Center. And also in the right of way, there's no restrictions to digital registered LDEV except rush hours. And on Shennan Road, there are only 1 road have a restriction for the BEV vehicle. And in the incentive policies, they also have spent much money to encourage the new energy logistic vehicles in Shenzhen. And about other measures, they also setting up green logistic areas to ban from light diesel trucks. It means only new energy logistic vehicles can enter this area. And also they promote and support the construction of new energy infrastructure and apply hydrogen energy in freight distribution sectors. And the next slide. And we want to see actually in China, we have very good national policies and very good local policies. In national policies, the state pays very high attention, and the ministries make great efforts in a coordinated way, and the direction and objective.
Thank you very much for this great presentation. And we have a question from the speaker, from the guests, and it's about if you could elaborate a bit more on the increased cost for urban freight electric vehicles in China.
Sorry, I come back. Can you hear me?
Yes. Was your presentation over? So perhaps while we're waiting for the speaker to return, we could move on to the next speaker, who is Mayor of Kochi Municipality Corporation, Anil Kumar, who will share with us his experience in Kochi, India. Welcome, Mr. Kumar, and the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Tumi. and also my co-panelists who are there, Xiaoyu, who has just completed her presentation, and Mr. Nicho Ntema. See, EcoLogistics in Kochi has been, in fact, mooted by and taken forward both by the Municipal Corporation of Kochi and the ICLEI. So, I think I will fastly move on to my slides. See, next, the Kochi Municipal Corporation area, as you see on the slide, it has a geographical area which is more or less surrounded by the sea, backwaters, and also we have a very net connectivity of canals between different places inside the city. And another geographical advantage which what Kochi enjoys is because of the chance for of the opportunity for an intermodal transit system, because there is a road connectivity including the national highways passing through Kochi. The waterways is already strengthened because we have a 3 inland waterway canals that are being connected, and these are national waterways also. So that means that it is already in the national Indian map. Kochi is already placed inside the map. We also have a container transport ship terminal, which is the earlier Cochin port has now been converted into a modern international container transshipment terminal now. And I'll also gladly tell that for the last 2 days, there has been an important development from where the Kerala state, which I represent, I am inside Kochi. Kochi is part of the Kerala state, of the Kerala state in India. And the northern extent of the northern tip of Kochi, which is of Kerala, which is Baipur in Kozhikode. Now the inland water, the transshipment terminal is now being connected to the Baipur terminal using the ships. And now we are also constructing another international terminal in the southern tip, which is in Trivandrum. So all these 3 terminals are going to be connected by ships. So the freight transportation is getting an impetus in the whole state also. Now again, the railway is also being connected. We have the Vallarpadam container terminal, which is connected by rail also. We also have a big terminal coming up in the marshalling yard, which is inside the city. You have so much space there. You have the metro there. You have the waterways there. You have the passenger movement there. So you have an international a kind of intermodal transit system in Wuppertal. That is the biggest advantage we have. We also have the Cochin International Airport. Next slide. Next slide, please. Yes, okay. And regarding the freight sector initiatives, we have, as I told you, we have started the EcoLogistics project in Kochi. So the first thing we did was that we had a baseline study on the urban freight. What is happening inside the city? Who are all the people who are there in the city who does the urban freight? We have also taken into consideration the small players inside the city. Maybe they might be transporting some one auto rickshaw inside the city, but we have to take into consideration of even these people. So that step we have already taken. The second one was that a low carbon action plan has been formulated and will be implemented. I'll tell you that we are now trying to introduce the 3-wheeler e-auto for the last mile connectivity. We have many auto rickshaws. I don't know whether everybody is conversant about this auto rickshaws, is very familiar with the auto rickshaws. We already have a passenger system with auto rickshaws, and now we are moving on to the freight segment where we are going to introduce 3-wheeler e-auto rickshaw for the last mile delivery. Next one. Next slide, please. The Municipal Corporation of Kochi is totally committed to see that the freight movement inside the city has to be changed. The whole map has to be changed, and we will have to introduce some changes to see that the roads and the diesel auto rickshaws and the diesel vehicles has to be moved out of the city roads in a very phased manner. So the first thing we did was that we started a very intense dialogue between the local administration and representatives from the public and private sector on freight management. I'll happily tell you that all the stakeholders involved in this, I'll tell you that in India we have a municipal corporation having only a limited role actually in these areas. But because there are many stakeholders involved, I called up all the stakeholders. I had a very threadbare discussion about all these things, and I'm happy to say that everyone was positive. All the stakeholders were positive to see that they understand the need of the hour and they are ready for the change in the freight movement sector to a low carbon action plan. This is how the low carbon action plan has found its place in the municipal corporation budget this year, and the political commitment is going to be there to implement these projects. The next step is that we have a KMTA, as in Singapore, as in many other European countries. I believe that in Kochi has been a front runner when you consider the cities in India, that we have already started a KMTA which unifies all the transport networks inside the city under one umbrella. And we have the Kochi Municipal Transport Authority. We always have the meetings of the KMT, and the KMT has decided to have a urban freight management committee has been set up by the KMTA for an integrated planning approach in the area of freight. So what I have to tell you is that all the stakeholders, the government, the city, everyone has been unified to see that there is a proper decision in this regard. Have I got time for 2 minutes more?
1 minute or 30 seconds, actually.
1 minute, 30 seconds. So I'll go just as Carl Lewis is running. EcoLogistics project in Kochi. I told you about the studies, and again the freight sector initiative. I told you about the budget and all that. Now, and also the KMTA. I'll also tell you that already the canals have been given a facelift with the state government pinning its own fund, and we have a integrated urban rejuvenation and water transport system whereby the city canals, which was laying idle. The next slide, please. I'll show you a photograph wherein earlier all the freight movement used to happen through these canals, and later the canals were abandoned because no freight movement happened. Now all these canals are going to be facelifted by the government, and after that we will see that the freight movement also goes through the canal. And finally, we have already introduced the Ro-Ro vehicles, and all these initiatives are happening. And I don't want to take much time because I'll have to conclude. I'll tell you that the Kochi Municipal Corporation is committed. We will be on the lead. We will be totally committed to the plan, and we will see that all the stakeholders are involved, and we will go by the with ICLEI to see that the urban transport sector in Kochi is transformed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kumar. You highlighted a lot of different components about the stakeholders buy-in, the governance structure through the Transport Authority, but also the Committee for Freight, and also the fact that there is a political commitment, but also walking the talk through allocation of resources. As we are running a bit late, perhaps if there are additional questions, I will ask them at the end of the session, and I will give the floor to the next speaker, who will speak about e-cargo bikes made in Africa, Nicho and Ntema. Over to you.
Thank you so much, and good morning and good afternoon. My name is Nicho, and I'm from Sharpeville in South Africa, and representing a company called Anywhere.Africa, Kenya Limited, which is going to be our marketing company for the rest of Africa. But we are making our bikes in Sharpeville, South Africa. So I'm going to present mainly the history of where we come from in terms of our business and our interventions as far as e-mobility is concerned. And this is what we actually do from Sharpeville. So on the next slide, it's our history in terms of where we come from. We were part of the CLEX project in Gauteng, which was developed with the framework of the CLEX Green Logistics Indicators, and was funded by the German Federal Ministry for Environment and Nature Conservation, as well as Building and Nuclear Safety, which is called BNU. So from there, this project brought in this particular bikes to the province of Gauteng, which is the province that is governing us, and it was done by the Department of Road and Transport. So our non-profit company called the Sharpeville City Development Project was introduced to this CLEX project by the department, and that's where we met Anywhere Berlin founders, Oliver Hickson and Stefan Noor, and other project leaders from the CLEIS project. That was in 2018. And then the next slide, it's on our growth. We then went to do a study on trolley waste harvesting with the department and the CSIR. And the idea was to actually use this Anywhere Berlin off-road electric cargo bicycles as potential replacement for waste harvesting, which is quite huge here in South Africa for people who are doing recycling. And we started our first microfactory in Sharpeville, and then Anywhere Berlin provided the kits and training and other support. So the concept was actually developed for commercialization of this particular process, whereby we developed a brand called Anywhere.Africa, made in Sharpeville, which is operated by Ntema Limited, which is my company. And then we trained 15 waste harvesters to be e-bike artisans and technicians. And today they can actually be able to build those particular bikes. And then the microfactory is now capable of producing one complete bike in 3 days. And also we can do product testing, technical training, rider training, and also maintenance and customization of these bikes. And so far we've manufactured more than 10 bikes, and then others are in production. And we are doing our own prototypes that we are busy exploring. On the next slide, our goals, mainly an approach, was based on the microfactory being piloted here in Sharpeville using the kits from Germany. But we intend to have a fully placed assembly of these bikes on all electrical and mechanical components and our manufacturing in Sharpeville. And our intention as well is to build our own lithium-ion batteries. So we have a team of young people, 30 of them, that have been trained to build these bikes. And then we'll be duplicating this to other townships on a nano and microfactory basis. And the intention as well is to build these bikes for local and export markets, especially within the African continent. That's why we're having this company that was incorporated in Kenya. On our next slide, which is economic impact, I think we can skip that one as well. I've already spoken on it. The next slide, please. I think it's the back one. Yeah, but we can go on. We're actually looking at how we fuse this, production within the communities that we live in, especially where we operate. So there is a process of research in terms of social accounting that we're doing with a group called Sharpeville 20 Economic Development Group. And then we are working with the Glasgow University academic by the name of Professor Harvey Gibson. So this is where we are measuring, modeling, and applying economics in South African townships to see on how e-mobility and electric vehicles can actually make an impact. So as we all know, some of us from Africa, that the townships were designed under the apartheid rule to not have an effective economy. But these bikes and this model of actually accounting are going to bring a change and a game changer in terms of mobility and electric vehicles in this particular settings. And the next slide. On the lessons that we learned, we have seen success factors in other countries in terms of these cargo bikes. The cost-effective, and they are actually cost-effective with lower capital and operating costs. They are fast and reliable, environmentally friendly, quiet and nimble. They bring a positive image and public perception, and they are actually good as well in terms of fitness. And there's no congestion and parking problems and no legal license requirements for drivers. So we intend to actually have these bikes replacing most of the things that we do in terms of moving from one point to another. So in that sense, other countries have shown this, especially Berlin in Germany. And when you go to the UK, you can actually see lots of these bikes being used, and Africa is actually following suit. The next slide. You can pass that one as well. I've already spoken on that. Maybe 2 slides after this. Yes, we have just done that. And then let's go to the other one. So we had a very, you can go through them until we reach the last two slides. But the most important part on this thing is that we managed to use these bikes for COVID relief during the emergence of COVID-19 in South Africa. And over 6,000 food parcels were distributed with these bikes over a radius of 30 kilometers to communities affected by COVID-19 since 2020. And then we have a very large fleet of 20 bikes. And that has actually created jobs for many young people, as well as technicians. And we can actually claim that we can build a bike in Sharpeville in South Africa that can actually work in all markets. We've got a couple of bikes in Kenya as we speak. And then we have other bikes that we are using in Cape Town, as well as other townships and cities here in South Africa. So the intention is to actually create this as an off-road cargo bike, but that can do a massive impact in an urban setting in every city. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nicho, for this great presentation and also for sharing pilots in not only in Kenya, but also in South Africa and across sub-Saharan Africa. So I have a question from the audience, and it's about perhaps a dimension that we haven't touched upon on the fact that freight is also generating jobs. So one of the questions is about how many jobs do you expect to create with the microfactory?
Yeah, one microfactory can actually be run by 3 people. But there is a domino effect to it in a sense that so many other things are actually getting involved, from putting up the tires and testing the bikes after they've been done, because everything is human based. So we don't use machines in terms of building these bikes. So the testing and many other things, they need people to be able to do that. So before we can actually sell a bike, 5 jobs will be created on a permanent basis. But there are jobs that are going to be created on a business case to business case on each bike, depending on how we model that bike or what we build it for, and what kind of business applications we use to it. So in terms of job creation, there's quite a lot of opportunities related to building these bikes. And one bike can generate 5 jobs from just building it, going forward to the application of a business case on each particular bike.
Thank you on that. And there is an additional question, and then we can bring back the speakers. This question is about cargo bikes and essentially regulation and policy measures. Is that an issue in Sub-Saharan Africa, in the countries that you're working in? And if so, how did you overcome these challenges?
Yeah, from the South African perspective, I think that's where we are expecting to have a lot of challenges in terms of regulation. But luckily, these bikes were brought in by the Department of Roads and Transport, and they indicated when we launched that there's still no legislative framework for e-cargo bikes, in particular, because, electric vehicles and mobility is a new thing in South Africa. But our bikes are mainly developed and designed for off-road. So they are built for African roads, where there are no tarred roads or any regulation whatsoever. But mainly, they can work wonders in rural settings where there are no roads at all. So we can actually be pathfinders through these bikes. So far, there's never been any challenges in terms of regulation. But we hope, through international trends in terms of e-mobility, there won't be a need for us to reinvent the wheel. We can just copy from what other countries are doing and look at what the regulatory framework is actually assisting them.
Thank you very much. And actually, there is a bit of, there are some guests that are cheering you, and really they're very excited about your program on e-cargo bikes in Africa. And I would like to ask a question to Xiaoyu. And it's again a question from the audience, and it's about if you could elaborate on your comment about the increased cost of urban freight electric vehicles in China.
About increased cost, right?
Increased cost in urban freight vehicles in China.
Okay, actually, about costs, I want to say two things. Actually, from purchased, when we buy a new free age vehicles, the diesel vehicle will be cheaper, and the new energy vehicle will be more expensive, about half of the price. More expensive, but when you use the urban freight electric vehicles, it may be cheaper than the diesel vehicles. So actually, there is not very certain that will increase much cost for using urban freight electric vehicles in China, and also the government has give some subsidies, so it's not so expensive actually.
Yes, indeed, the total cost of operation usually it's a bit lower. And I wonder also, as a follow-up question, what has been the impact of reduced subsidies from the government in China?
Would you
that
please
has
say it
any
again?
implications? Has the reduced subsidies from the national government impacted on the deployment of the vehicles?
So you mean the subsidy has reduced? Yes, from 2019, they have reduced half of the national subsidies, and the local subsidy is also cancelled. And actually, you can see from the my first slide, in 2018 and 2019, the sales of urban freight electric vehicles is reduced from these 2 years. The data from these 2 years.
Yeah. And there is also an additional question for you, and it's about the type of technology and whether hydrogen is used in freight distribution, and if so, if it's by propulsion or as energy supply for electricity.
Yes, we have one city in Foshan, in Guangdong province. They use hydrogen in freight distribution, but the hydrogen is used as energy supply for electricity. It's not a direct use for propulsion, just for the energy supply for electricity.
Thank you, Xiaoyu. And perhaps to close this session, one quick question also to Nicho again, about how to, from your perspective and from your experience, how do you go beyond the pilot phase, and what is the power of leapfrogging, as you mentioned, the technology transfer from Germany to Africa?
Thank you. Yeah, I think we are still grappling with the government support, but we have spoken to the National Department of Trade and Industry here in South Africa, which has been the one that understood the incoming technology that we bought as the first ever pioneers of this particular technology. So for us to actually jump from where we are now, we need to be able to set up the factories to put up these bicycles, especially from the frame side. And we are in that particular process now. But the most impact will be done on small communities and rural areas, as well as townships, where our intention is to set up what we call the micro factories, where one of them can be able to produce 20 bikes to 40 bikes a month. And in that sense, we can have much more better impact in terms of socioeconomic challenges that we have. And that in itself will need government support. And we are intending to continue with the discussions. And so far, so good. We are heading towards our first factory, which probably will be established by the end of this year.
Thank you very much for your insights. I would like to thank all the speakers, and perhaps we had a lot of very interesting experiences about the importance of coordination across the different level of governments, from the national to the local policies and also incentives. The importance of political will and allocation of resources. Of course, the stakeholders engagement component is coming back again as the importance of the buy-in of different actors is crucial for freight and logistics. And as a last point, but last but not least, it's especially the importance of technology and identifying how these are financially and also financially, but also socially viable. So, and this is the perfect segue as well for the next session, which I will hand over to Friedel, my co-moderator.
Thank you, Tumi, for moderating this very interesting case study forum with equally inspiring, but also very different cases of urban freight actions in various geographies. So in this next section, we are looking into technological innovation for urban freight. Innovation, of course, is just as crucial as policy when we want to achieve transformational change, which is something that is certainly required in our freight systems. So in this section, I have two speakers, and I'm going to welcome them now together. So first of all, I have Mr. Boyong Wang from the Smart Freight Center. The Smart Freight Center, I think, is a very important organization because it has done a lot for the global agenda setting on green freight. Yeah, you have one product that I know, for example, is the Global Green Freight Action Plan, but you have done so much more interesting work, like I think the Global Logistics Emission Council, etc. And you are the China director of the Smart Freight Center. So welcome to you, Boyong. How are you?
Thank you, Friedel. It's nice to see you again.
Yeah, nice to see you indeed. We've met before, I think, a couple of years ago and haven't been in touch since, yes, so really great to reconnect at this point. And the second speaker is Professor Dr. Sebastian Stütz, who works for a very renowned research institution, which is the Frauenhofer Institute for Logistics and Material Flow in Dortmund in Germany. And he is involved in several research projects dealing with urban logistics, but he is actually an industry practitioner himself. He has worked in the industry before, so he comes both from the academic but also the practical perspective, and I'm very excited to hear what you have to share. But first of all, it is your turn, Boyong, to provide us with an insight into the work of the Smart Freight Center in the work of urban freight and the innovations that you are working on. Over to you, Boyong.
Thank you, Friedel. Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be here. And actually, it's a great opportunity to introduce what we've been doing here in China. Friedel just mentioned what we have done in Amsterdam office and globally. So for this session, I'm going to talk about what we have been working on over the last 7 to 8 years in China. Next slide. Yes. So I'm going to talk about shippers' demand, especially on the setup logistics platform. The background for those is first of all, is a commitment from the China government, the government side. It's a commitment to peak carbon emission by 2030 and carbon neutrality by 2060. So the government is making implementation plan on reaching carbon peak and also carbon neutrality. On the other side of this story is, of course, from the multinationals, the shippers. There's a new momentum on carbon emission target, set up the target, and especially accelerate the process of digitalization and to get their supply chain more resilient and sustainable. Therefore, there's a strong request for SFC to call for to help with zero emission and sustainable logistics. Next slide, please. So the shippers' demand is how to make the logistics sector more efficient, how to increase transparency on their supply chain, and how to anticipate and align with government policy. And this is actually added up more by COVID-19. It is much more urgent. Next one, please. So those are the solutions that we all know that started. Of course, we talk about a lot of new energy vehicles, consolidate your fleet, and even switch your transport modes. I'm not going to go detail, but essentially you need the buyers, meaning the shippers and the carriers, to work together. Next slide, please. To answer this demand, we set up a Smart Freight Shippers Alliance. So essentially, we get the shippers, the carriers, and the industry associations to work together. The goal is, of course, to have the Chinese logistics sector more efficient, more sustainable, more green. Next slide, please. So as a C, we just sit in the middle. So we bring everybody together. Next slide, please. So what we've done is we get the shippers to have their carriers building up a smart carrier pool. And this is, of course, work on compliance, efficiency, and low carbon development. Smart Freight Center is facilitating the adoption of fuel efficient solutions, technologies. On the lower side, you see Shell, Scania, those are the technology providers to help the carriers and shippers to work together. And on the above level, you have the government policymakers, you have the CDP, you have JED, who's recognizing the smart freight leaders. So this is an ecosystem, a logistic platform to start with the shippers, but really get the carriers work together with all the key stakeholders of logistics sector to move towards low efficiency and sustainability. Next one, please. So this is the key work that we've been doing. A, to influence the policy, develop national, the industry standard, so carrier selection standard, and also a China national industry standard on calculating logistics sector emissions. We want to improve the efficiency for the carriers by building up a smart carrier pool and also introduce smart transport manager training. We set up a scoreboard for the shippers to recognize the effort on green and low carbon development. So therefore, we're building up a very strong partnership to get this to work together. So next slide, please. So I think I'm going to focus a little bit of the takeaways or the lessons learned from SFC China. A, we start with the shippers. We want the shippers to take a visible leadership role and bring their supply chain carriers to work together. Secondly, we want to embed the low carbon development and climate action with their business practice. And thirdly, we need a partnership that honor transparency, honor sustainability, and low carbon development, so to bring a value proposition to all the key stakeholders to work together. We want to have a harmonized and unified emission calculation standard to measure the efforts of the carriers and shippers. And most of all, by building up this smart logistics platform, or what we call Smart Freight Shippers Alliance, we want to catalyze the climate actions from the shippers and carriers together. So it's a partnership, it's everybody work together, it's a mission toward low emission for China's logistics sector. Thank you.
Thank you, Boyong, for giving us this insight into the work of the Smart Freight Center. It's very inspiring. I recently heard someone say that logistics is like a football game. It involves many players who have to work together in order to win. And this platform is probably one example where this can work quite well. We will come back to you with questions after our next speaker. So I encourage you in the audience, if you are on the platform viewing it, or if you are participating as a delegate in one of the hubs, please give us your questions. And in the last question segment, we have something special for you. If you are joining as a delegate in a hub, you can ask your question in person. So this is like a fishbowl where you can come into this live stream, show your face, and ask to our speakers or to me whatever you want to ask, or even make a statement and share your perspective on urban freight in your city. So thank you again, Boyong. Please don't leave, of course. And now I turn it over to you, Professor Stütz, for your input.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for the opportunity to speak today here. My name is Sebastian Stütz. I'm working for the Frauenhofer Institute for Material Flow and Logistics, which is located in the west of Germany in Dortmund. And I'm also a professor at the International University of Applied Sciences in Erfurt. I'm working on urban logistics and electrified urban logistics since 2012. And yeah, I want to give you today a brief overview about innovative aspects when it comes to facilitate the market uptake of electric trucks. The first good news is that electric trucks are becoming available finally, after we have dealt a long time with lighter vehicles only. We have seen that the trucks, for example, developed by MAN or Daimler, have entered the test stages. And next week, actually next Wednesday, the Daimler e-Actros vehicle is officially presented to the general public. And also other manufacturers like Renault or the Dutch-based DAF are presenting electrified medium or heavy-sized utility vehicles, which is generally a good development. So we are turning from conversion vehicles to serious production. But how can we accelerate the uptake of electric trucks? Why in the first place should we use electric trucks in urban logistics? Well, we heard it. We have a substantial share of the population living in urban areas, and the quality of living is negatively impacted by combustion engines. We have air pollution. We have air pollution with respect to climate issues. Carbon oxides are emitted from diesel engines or nitrogen oxides, as well as particulate matter. And the percentages here show a direction of which contribution actually urban logistics has to the total emissions of air pollution. And we have, of course, a noise issue. In Europe, for example, we are striving for reduced noise nuisances from freight. And so there is a clear answer to this question: why we should use electric trucks in urban logistics? Because there are no tailpipe emissions, and we have a substantial reduction in engine noise. But will freight electrification be sufficient? We heard that today as well, that not only emissions are an issue, but there are more issues with urban logistics. So would it be sufficient to just electrify the status quo? And the easy answer is no, it would not be sufficient, since traffic has as well a negative impact on the quality of life. We have congested roads with safety issues. We have the risk of traffic accidents. And there's also the point that the traffic from road vehicles requires road infrastructure. We have to move them, we have to recharge them or refuel them, we have to park them, or we have to reserve special locations for transshipping, loading and unloading. We have to keep these issues in mind as well when it comes to sustainable urban logistics. But let's focus on the electric truck. Which innovations can help us to drive the uptake of electric trucks? When it comes to innovation, and I've studied economics, I always think of Joseph Schumpeter, the classic economist who distincts different types of innovation. From this classic Schumpeter perspective, we can distinguish first product innovation, market innovation, process innovation, and furthermore, resource innovation. Product innovation is very important when it comes to the receiver. The receivers inside the urban areas are an important driver for the uptake of electric trucks. If receivers require logistics companies to deliver with zero or low emission fleet, the logistics companies have no choice but to deploy electric trucks. So if we put an incentive for the receivers, for retail, for commerce, for anyone there to require eco-friendly delivery, silent delivery, or pickup or delivery inside the city, there is a substantial incentive to deploy electric trucks locally. And vice versa, product innovation for the logistics providers could also help the uptake of electric trucks. For example, the Netherlands have introduced a certificate called PEAK, which is used to certify low noise vehicles and equipment. And PEAK can be connected to privileges. So, for example, the privilege to deliver at certain time windows, which are not available for combustion or not PEAK certified vehicles. So the next type of innovation, market innovation, is very interesting for the uptake of electric trucks. And especially here in Europe, we are focusing on making off-peak or nighttime delivery in connection with electric trucks a viable business model in order to accelerate the uptake. Because delivery in not only during the day, but also at times where there's a low traffic volume on the road or at night even, could increase the efficiency of an electric truck dramatically compared to a diesel truck. And in most European cities, delivery at night is only technically possible if you're using an electrified vehicle. Process innovation is also a category which is very well known from Joseph Schumpeter. And process innovation is also a key to introduce electric trucks. Electrification is creating quite a new number of vehicle types: tricycles, quadricycles, e-bikes, and small electric trucks, which cover less area in the urban space than a passenger car. And we should focus on incentives for companies to deploy new innovative processes involving electric mobility and micromobility especially, which is less likely to cause traffic congestions. And we heard today that micro-hubs are already here, and micro-hubs may be a key element to do so. And finally, resource innovation. So the urban area is also a source of energy. Many municipalities have, for example, a local electricity production based on waste incineration. And you cannot only produce electricity from that, you could also produce hydrogen from that, which would lead in the very same direction, namely silent trucks and emission-free trucks. So this would also cut the distribution chain from generating let's say, fuel and the usage of the fuel. And this is also a key to bring down the carbon footprint of mobility. So will the electric truck eventually unlock its full potential? We see it's all a matter of regulation as we perceive it. The truck is here, and will it unlock its full potential? Let's find out. Thanks for listening. I'm open to questions.
Yeah, thank you very much, Professor Dr. Stütz, for this very interesting insight into innovations made in Germany, I suppose, but that can also be applied across the world.
No, not exclusively.
Okay, great. One question that came in for you is, how do the truck drivers like the electric trucks? What's the reception like?
I can report that from own experience, because I conducted various interviews with truck drivers. And actually, I like to tell the story of one driver of a electrified 12-ton truck who said various interesting things. The first thing he said is, it feels like driving a train, actually. it's so smooth, it doesn't vibrate that much. And since there's not that much vibration, the driver's cabin is rather silent. So the person said after his shift, he returns less stressed because of less vibration. And one thing which is quite a point for him, or was for that person, was that talking to dispatch was much easier because the silence inside the cabin allowed him to use his Bluetooth headset, and he hadn't to raise his voice that much because the cabin was rather silent compared to a combustion vehicle. So this, of course, is not representative, but different drivers agreed on the economics. For example, a package driver said that this stop-and-go traffic, which is very, very characteristic for package delivery, is much easier when you have a direct drive electric vehicle because all the gear shifting is not there and the acceleration is just brilliant. And from a colleague, I know that this acceleration point is very, very interesting for refuse collection, but I have no personal experience with drivers from that industry.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So, in overall, there seems to be a very positive reception, which is great.
Yes, yes. The only negative receptions were in early phases of our studies when the reliability of the technology was not there because, by and large, any truck was made from a conversion process and was handmade. And now we have approached serious production, so the quality issue shouldn't be there.
Okay. Then one question to you, Boyong. Since you talked also about data and collection of data, the urban freight sector is a very fragmented one. Yeah, how do you get the companies actually to provide you with the data that you need? Is that something that the platform is also dealing with?
Yes. Data is always a problem. One, the logistics sector is very fragmented. Well, in Chinese case, more than 90% carriers are individual driver owners. Secondly, from the shipper's angle, their logistic part is always outsourced. So to get the data is quite a challenging work. So for this platform, we try to solve this problem. So we started with the shippers. Essentially saying we have the shippers to join hands to work together with their carriers. So we have the shippers to bring their carriers together. So they would ask their carriers information, and we are building a smart carrier pool for the Smart Freight Shippers Alliance. So the first thing is we have the shipper to develop a carrier selection criteria. So we honor efficiency, we honor compliance, we honor green development. So we put that into a business practice. So therefore, when we do logistic procurement, we develop a standard that is used by the shippers to choose their carriers. So therefore, if the shipper asks their carrier to put all the info, the data together, they would do so because that will influence their future business. So as a third independent party, we work together with the China Federation for Logistics and Purchase, which is to review and assess the data provided by the carriers. So therefore, we can ensure the data are accurate, and we can also ensure we will have the first bar or the initial bar ready for compliance, efficiency, and low carbon development.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Boyong. Maybe I turn also a similar question to you, Mr. Stütz, about the data collection.
Sure.
What kind of innovative approaches are you using or are you aware of to get the data to make analysis and evaluate whether policies are effective or measures?
Oh, this is a major issue. Collecting data from the urban space, I can absolutely agree, is really a pain in the neck. It is also not something which is related to the point that there are many SMEs involved in urban traffic. The same issue is there if you are dealing with large shipping companies like UPS, DHL, and the like, because they regard the data as their primary source, as a critical resource even to protect their business. So by and large, they do not like to share. At Frauenhofer, we have developed a concept, a data sharing concept, which allows to define roles, who is allowed to have access to which kind of data and for how long. And in a nutshell, it's targeted at sharing data as you like, and you can also revoke the access to certain data and restrict it in terms of time or company. It's called the urban data space. It's a variant of the industrial data space, which our sister institute developed. But by and large, I can only say collecting data to evaluate policies in the urban field is it's always a thing which requires a lot of effort, and the results are often not satisfying. I'm currently conducting a study for a major city here in the west of Germany, and collecting even data from the point of sales is very frustrating at times. So I do not have a silver bullet solution here, sorry.
That's understandable. I have two more questions to you, Mr. Stütz, that came in from the audience. One from Mr. Bart from Belgium, who said that the major rollout for electric trucks is the purchase price, 3 to 4 times more expensive. How can we deal with this?
Sorry, what is the major driver?
No, one of the major obstacles for the purchase price. How can we?
Yes.
Will prices fall very quickly, or are there other policy instruments, incentives that can be applied?
From my perspective, Mr. Bart, thank you about this very, very important question. So the main cost driver for electric vehicles, and especially electric trucks, is, I think we all know it, the battery. And the good news is that battery prices have dropped dramatically during the last 10 years. But the times of dramatic improvements and the times of dramatic price reductions, from my perspective at least, seem to be over. There might be price reduction. We might see price reductions per kilowatt hour, but should not be that much as like in the past 5 years or so. So what does it mean for electric trucks? Electric trucks, as trucks in general, are currently not manufactured as cars. So this is largely due because cars are made, passenger cars are made in larger volumes. So economies of scale in production are not that much there when it comes to truck production as in passenger car production. This is why the electric, the additional costs of electric trucks remain a burden until the serious production of trucks may allow to reduce them through economies of scale. But this is itself, designing production processes to obtain economies of scale is still an open issue for many manufacturers. So expect a price delta for the next years, while electric passenger cars might break even when it comes to purchase price alone in the next, say, 4 or 5 years. I'd say that the same is not true for electric trucks. To cut these things, I'm pretty sure that the purchase incentives are there, but from my perspective, we need more usage incentives. So if we broaden the scope if we allow more business cases for electric trucks than for diesel trucks, it could be very, very helpful to have this, because in the end you do not care about the costs associated with a truck, but with you care about the profit you generate with this truck. And if, for example, one truck is can be deployed all around the clock in an urban environment because it's silent and emission free, and on the other hand, you have a truck which might be cheaper when it comes to purchase price, but essentially can only drive for 8 or 10 hours per day, you have a substantial disadvantage. And especially if you look at European urban areas, which are already barring the entry for trucks or restricting it to a very, very small time windows. If you have to squeeze your delivery in the city center into time windows of, say, 2 hours per day, what's the option there? The option is, if you have a combustion truck, you have to drive into the city center from all directions and rush through your deliveries. Or perhaps you can use 1 or 2 electric trucks and take your time. Just think about the headcount involved. If you have the first solution, the cheaper truck, but requiring more personnel because you have inefficient routing and have to come from all directions to deliver, it might turn out that you run into a problem because driving personnel is scarce.
Yep.
The electric truck, if allowed more time per day, could be an issue to come out of this problem.
Okay. Thank you for this comprehensive response, but to an indeed very technical question, which requires certainly a good, solid answer. So one more question to you, Boyong. The question to you is, what is more sustainable for the medium and long haul, so maybe leaving the urban context now, electric truck or freight train? Should we shift to rail rather on the long haul than to electric trucks, or could electric trucks also be a solution for long haul distances?
Well, I think we cannot exclude one from another. It is essentially on which scenario, on the area that you use them. For shippers and their carriers who is more working on urban delivery, I would suggest you consider the EVs, the e-trucks, or new energy vehicles. But for big shippers who is organizing the multimodal transport, and especially from long distance, I would suggest to consider a freight train or SWIFT, the transport from truck to rail or even to water. So this is a system. So therefore, I would highly suggest that we consider this under different scenario. For different solutions. Let's make this way. So therefore, we have one method. If what this is for. So if we say we're all looking for the solutions from NEVs, new energy vehicle, or multimodal, we would have to use a method, which of course, Friedel, you mentioned. We have a global logistic emission council calculation framework to calculate the emission reduced by shifting from diesel truck to NEVs, by shifting from the transport from road to rail or from waterways. So what will bring the largest CO2 emission impact? So I think that would be, the benchmark on the matter that we should take to consider these options.
Thank you. Talking about emissions, which emissions are we talking about? Greenhouse gases or other air pollutant emissions?
Well, we started with, we are working together with GIZ, and GIZ is helping us with developing the carrier selection standard. We are all working under China Green Freight Initiative. When we see China Green Freight Initiative, we were actually working together with the grain-free Europe, grain-free Asia, and also U.S. smart way. So the concept of green here is low carbon. So it is not really pollution, air pollution or black carbon. It is really GHG emission, carbon emissions.
Thank you. Then I turn over again to you, Professor Stütz. The topic of driver shortage is a serious one, not only in Germany, but across the world. No one nowadays wants to be a truck driver. So what about autonomous vehicles? Is this something on the near-term horizon, or do we have to wait another 10, 20 years, or is it something we shouldn't think about at all?
Autonomous vehicles. Right now, we've seen a lot of enthusiasm here. I do not want to curb that enthusiasm, but the most examples of autonomous driving inside an urban environment, which are known to me, still involve a lot of human interaction from a dispatcher stepping in order to avoid a vehicle being stuck somewhere on the road or the pavement. But there's, from my perspective, a combination of partial autonomous driving and human drivers, could perhaps mitigate the driver shortage. Because if we could innovate a vehicle type which makes one driver more productive because he is supplemented by autonomous vehicles, which may be guided by this driver very, very close to the point of delivery or pickup, and then perhaps leave a chain of vehicles just following his human-driven lead vehicle. And this application could become reality pretty soon. We have a startup here in the west of Germany, which has a very nice name called Duck Train, like a mother duck and the ducklings behind it. Just like that, it drives into an urban area, and the ducklings are delivering or are released from the train and very close at the point of delivery. So this concept, which is currently being researched and demonstrated, is, from my perspective, a very, very good example how to make a single person more productive before we turn to full autonomous driving, which is still a major issue. And the marketing guys might tell you otherwise, but in practice, it's not working right now.
Okay, thank you very much, Sebastian. Now we have actually a guest from Kenya coming in who wants to share a question in person with us. So while waiting for this person to come in, I can ask another question and ask you for a very quick response about this concept of a 15-minute city, short ways in a city, urban planning. How can that be used to make urban freight more sustainable? Very quick, please, so we have time for the response for the guest from Kenya.
Sorry, sorry. Were you talking to me?
Oh, sorry, I didn't mention. Yeah, okay, Professor Stütz. I didn't say who would answer that question.
How to make urban freight sustainable in a very, very quick and efficient way, right? This was the question.
Yeah, the question was from Shisha Vaida, who asked about mixed land use, about the 15-minute city. So this entire urban planning dimension. We haven't talked about that now, but maybe you can share very quickly what impact that can have to make urban freight more sustainable.
To me, a very large impact, because the world of commerce is turning to an e-commerce world. So the retailers located in the cities selling, for example, commodities for daily use may still remain there, but a large share of goods is right now ordered to the doorstep. And this is causing major issues in urban logistics and has major issues for the companies and also for the environment. And a very, very simple way to cut the emissions and ease a little bit the pressure put on urban deliveries right now would be to consolidate, and not in the way many people think about consolidation, but consolidation in a way that there is for example, a counter or a box or a shelf where the deliveries are going to, and then this location is maybe suitable for you, for example, because it's at your workplace or at the supermarket, and you just simply pick up the consignments which originally were bound for your doorstep. And I think this consolidation, which you can see already in concepts, for example, like the Amazon locker or different parcel locker systems, systems like these can dramatically improve the efficiency of B2C deliveries, and as a consequence, reduce the kilometers driven by package vehicles. And if we have such a pickup system in place, and this pickup system does not involve more traffic driven by combustion vehicles from us driving to the package reception point and picking it up. If we have such a system in place, I'm pretty sure that we can dramatically cut emissions, because eventually the round trip of the package vehicle will also be cut if we use such consolidation points. And this is this opens up a large window of opportunity for electrified trucks filling these pickup and drop-off points.
Thank you, Professor Stütz. So we have not run out of questions, but we have run out of time, I'm afraid. So to all of you who have been watching and asking questions and your question has not been answered, first of all, I apologize for bad time management, but second of all, please get in touch with Boyong and Mr. Stütz. I think you both have probably registered on our event platform, so you can be reached there, or otherwise email us and we can put you in touch. I'm sure they are available to share their knowledge even further. So that brings me to the very final section in which Tumi and I will again briefly reflect on how the day went. So I certainly have many takeaways. My main takeaway is hashtag, it's all about stakeholder coordination coupled with innovation. And I've also learned that I think simple solutions can already make a big difference. This inspiring story from South Africa was really a highlight for me, one of many highlights, of course. Tumi, what was your main takeaway or your highlight of today?
Actually, it was a metaphor that you mentioned. It's really about, it's really apt because there is the Euro Cup at the moment. And so the fact that in urban freight, it's like a football team and everyone is contributing their own way to make sure that it's a sustainable urban freight system. And that it needs to be integrated then with the passenger transport, especially in urban areas where the space is limited. And of course, with the buy-in of different stakeholders, each of them brings in their own added value through technology, innovation, or through policy and enabling conditions. So that's it's very similar to what you're saying about working together and making sure that the different priorities are aligned. And of course, we have covered a lot of room, and so it's also unavoidable that some of the questions were left unanswered. And as you mentioned, there are still a number of days, and most of the speakers are still reachable through the platform. And it would be amazing if the audience could still also share their views with us through perhaps what you wanted to share. Through the different options that this conference will allow for it.
Yeah, thank you, Tumi. I think you are referring to the wall of ideas. So everyone is encouraged to post their main takeaways, their key lessons learned, your nuggets from today's session on our wall of ideas that we have on our event platform. So Please let us know what you found particularly inspiring. Share your own perspectives. Make use of this feature on our event platform. I think we have to wrap it up here. To me, we already are a little bit over time. And thank you for being such a great co-host. Thank you, all of you, for listening. And please come or stay online because we have more events coming. We have a little break now for 15 minutes, which you can even join and mingle with other participants. And then afterwards, we have a session that will deal with an innovative communication for sustainable transport. We will launch a publication. It's called Future Ahoy, which is a not a telenovela, a graphic novel dealing with transport transformation. So something you should have a look at. So thank you again. Thank you to me. Thank you to all of you. And see you in the next session.